name is Dr. Nathan Groot. I am a music instructor at the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts, where I teach string ensemble, applied string lessons, and other music courses. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Mazas Etude number 7, Cantabile. This is a part of set 3 for Arkansas All-Region and All-State for the year 2025-2026. First things first, we're going to want to make sure we're using the right edition. This is the Schirmer edition that we're using. It's a yellow book. Different editions will have different fingerings, this sort of thing, so just make sure you're using the right thing. If you're not sure, you can always ask your teacher about that. One note about the editions: if you're like me, and some of my students are also like this, and play both viola and violin a lot, you may notice if you're studying this etude on both instruments that they have different names and different fingerings. This just has to do with who edited the edition, so just want to put that in. If you are a doubler, don't get too confused. So today we're going to be talking about the fingerings and notes that are in the viola version of the Schirmer edition of the Mazas Etude. Whenever we look at a new piece of music, a new etude, a new piece of repertoire, we're going to want to start with what's at the very beginning. So the key signature, time signature, these are both straightforward. We are in 4/4 common time, and the key signature is 1 flat. That could go one of two ways, as you probably know. In this case, it is F major. The tempo marking in the etude book is andante, but we are given through the ASVOA website a metronome marking, and that is quarter note equals 88. So that'll give you a goal when you are working this up with your metronome. Okay, so the title, Cantabile. This is an Italian word which means singing or in a singing manner. So when we play this, we should be thinking in a kind of a vocal, lyrical sense. How we shape these phrases should be in a sort of singing manner. Now, this etude presents quite a few challenges. The thing I love about the Mazas etudes is there's just a ton of stuff packed into each etude. Now, that means there's a lot to think about when you are studying it. I approach a lot of these videos by sort of talking about categories of things, maybe like I'll talk about the bowing, and then I'll talk about the fingering, and then think about the etude as a whole. I'm going to take a different approach here. We're just going to go measure by measure, phrase by phrase, and I'm going to try to address the things that I think will be most useful for you as you are reading through it. One other thing I want to throw in is this edition has a couple errors in it, or let's say issues. So it's not so much that rhythms are wrong as there's a little ink missing. So maybe a dotted quarter note, the dot's missing, right? So I'll address those as well, so you can sort of follow along with your part and maybe make some of these corrections as well. Okay, one thing before we actually get into the phrase by phrase, measure by measure analysis is I want to talk about shifting. This may be review for you, and if it is, feel free to skip ahead or just watch it for the review. Never a bad idea to review things. So when we shift, the action of shifting, we want to think about a couple things. So we're in first position right now. Our thumb is right here. Our first finger's here, right? We're not squeezing. When we shift from first, second through third, our hand just moves towards us. There's no different shape, no rotating, nothing like that. When we shift, also another important thing, we want to let up on the finger pressure. So now I'm pushing down the string, so I'm pushing the string down, now the finger is just resting lightly on the string. When the finger's resting lightly on the string, that is the type of finger pressure we want when we are shifting, when we're on the move, okay? So, shifting from first to third, everything stays the same. The thumb is exactly where it normally is. All of this stays the same. What happens when we go to fourth? We come halfway around. Our thumb is right under the neck, and our knuckles are starting to come up high. Our elbow is starting to come toward the center of our body, but we're not all the way around just yet. How about fifth position? This is where we're all the way around. Our thumb is on the other side of the neck. The side it's not usually on, it's on the other side now that we're in fifth position. we're all the way around now. Our elbows are round, our knuckles are high, and we have a nice space here. The biggest issue I see when people are shifting up to fifth is they'll shift up, but they won't come all the way around. Their thumb will be down, their hand will be low. And a good way to test yourself is to ask this question: where would my pinky finger go if I dropped it without moving anything else, without adjusting the hand? So let's say you shift up to fifth position and hey, it looks okay, but my pinky finger would not go on the string, right? So a good test is if my pinky finger would go on the string without needing to do this, then you're in a good position shifting. So just sort of ask yourself that question: where would my pinky finger go if I dropped it? And that's a good way to tell if you're around enough for fourth and fifth positions. Once you get to fifth, you're all the way around, and subsequent positions you just keep going up and keep your hand in line. Try to keep that pinky finger in line with the string, and that's a good way to tell if your hand frame is solid. All right, so looking at the first measure, we start in third position. So we have our first finger on an F, natural. Then we have open C to A. So when you let off your fingers, try to keep third position really close at hand. So in other words, you don't want to go F and then fingers far away, because then you'll have trouble finding that A. So you play F, and put your fingers down. For another angle, it looks like this. So don't take your fingers too far away there, okay? So in the second measure, we have a G, shift down to D, and now for this B flat, you might be tempted to cross strings, but you shouldn't. Why? Because all of this is on the C string. You see that dotted line above the notes? So we actually need to go from D up to B flat. Fourth finger. This is the first opportunity for me to introduce a topic that you may be familiar with, and this is a concept of guide tones. Sometimes they're called helper notes or helper tones. So the idea is these guide tones get you thinking about positions rather than fingers. So if I'm going from D to B flat, I don't want to see my students doing this with their fingers up in the air, because then you're just guessing, and you shouldn't be guessing with this type of a shift. So what's our guide tone? We play a D, and we want to be thinking about third position. So we go from D to this imaginary F, and then we can put our fingers down. So F is the guide tone. So we go D, and there's this sort of note that is not written in the music, but we're imagining it so that we can land that shift. And when I play, I tend to play a little bit with more slides than maybe other people might, and that's sort of a matter of taste. But you can kind of hear the guide tones in my playing. I try not to make it that obvious, but you can hear that in there. And I would encourage you to practice with that guide tone, right? We'll be talking more and more about guide tones all the way through that, but that's just an introduction to it. So you're thinking about first finger D, first finger F, and that puts you in a position to find that B flat, okay? So we shift up, down a half step to E. So we have E, G. Now what? We need to shift up to second finger B flat. And if you were my student in person, I would be asking you, what position is that in? But since this is a video, I'll tell you, this is fifth position, our first finger being on A. So you're going for that B flat. Make sure you know where that A is. By the way, the note in fifth position is going to cross right where the viola, the body of the viola crosses. So we've played E, and then we have B flat. That again is 2, 4, 3, 3, 2, 1. And this is sort of the peak of this phrase. So we're sort of leading to that C. Ba da dee da da da. again, this is given to us with a crescendo and decrescendo, so you don't have to mess with it too much. So, looking at this phrase, we start in third, go down to first, back to third, second position, fifth position. Okay, a lot of shifting just in these first 4 measures. So we've just played the end of this phrase. Da-da-dum. Now what? It says G string and it has the note F with a 4 over it. So what do we make of this? We don't stay in position, we actually have to shift. We have to shift to third position on the G string. We've been freed from the C string now. So we can go to the G string and we need to go to third position. The last note you've played is A natural. You're all the way around. So we need to get from here to here. So I have an exercise for you. A natural 5th position to C 3rd position. Let's go back and forth. A, 3rd position, back. I want you to see what my thumb is doing and try to see if your thumb is doing the same thing. So here we are. See how it's coming all the way around? Okay, so make sure you're going all the way back to the correct position. So, why am I thinking about C? Well, it's kind of another guide tone. I'm thinking about going to 3rd position and then putting the 4th down. So I'm thinking about positions rather than individual notes. This is a theme I will repeat over and over again until you're sick of it. Okay, so we're at this F, 4th finger. I think all of this is in 3rd. All of this is in 3rd. So it has a string crossing. Cross over to the C string. The D string. Now we have this little sort of squiggle. It's an ornament. It's called a turn. So it means we go higher note, back to the note, lower note, back to the note. So higher note, back to the note, lower note, back to the note. So that's B flat, C, B flat, A, B. Slowly, that looks like this. So that's a turn. So we need to fit that in and not distort the rhythm, right? So we have. And that's how we're going to fit that in. After you put that turn in, we have C and then a harmonic D. For these harmonics that don't require us to go into a new position, there's no reason to go into 4th position here because what comes next is actually in 1st position. So we don't really need to mess with our hand here. Think about this. Your 4th finger's on C and it's on the tip, hopefully, tip of the finger. To reach that D harmonic, these fingers need to come off so the harmonic can ring, and this finger on the tip flattens. See how my hand is not actually moving? It's my finger going from the tip to flat and extended. That's how I'm getting that harmonic. So I would practice this. And see if you can land that each time, making the harmonic speak, okay? So that measure on its own is starting in 3rd position, G. And then we're going to open C. All right, so when we get to this open C, we're going to use it to shift. So we're up here. When we go to the open C, our hand is moving as well, okay? Couple of things in these 2 measures. We have a shift to 3rd and back, and then we have a double dotted note. So let's talk about the shift. So we're all in 1st position here, easy peasy. Shift. This is an easy shift compared to some of the other ones we have, but it's a good opportunity to reinforce something. When we shift, we don't necessarily want it to be a glissando or a portamento with our finger pressing down. We don't want that. We want to let the finger pressure off and ghost the note. hides the shift a little bit, but it also allows us to shift more accurately, because when you're pressing that finger down, it creates a kind of drag that'll slow you down. Okay, so we have. So we have a double dotted quarter note, and then two 30-second notes, and we'll get into these 30-second notes even more on the next line, but let's talk about this a little bit. So think about this. Quarter note has how many eighth notes? Two eighth notes within a quarter note, okay? Dotted quarter note, half the value is added back. So a quarter note with one dot would be 3 eighth notes. So a double dotted quarter note adds half of half the value back to it. So to subdivide it, we have eighth note plus eighth note plus eighth note plus a 16th note. So if I were to think about it this way, I would be thinking 1 E and 2 E and then these two 30-second notes fit within that last 16th note of the second beat. If I think about subdividing 16th notes, 1 E and 2 E and da da da, it'll be like this. Okay, so as you're playing, I want you to be thinking about this. Da 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 da. And that's how you can time it. We'll get some more practice on the next line as well. Now, measure 9 starts with an E. Has a first finger. Makes sense, right? But take a look. It says G string over it. So this is not this E. It's this E. Up here in 5th position. So you've just played this. You have one rest to get up here. I would recommend practicing getting from this F to this E. Practice getting back and forth from 1st to 5th position to really get that shift memorized, that distance. Okay, so let's assume we've made it to 5th position during that rest. What happens in this phrase? We have E. That's that first measure. So we have E, F, and then we have a grace note, A. 4-3, 4-3. Make sure that your fingers are down already, so your third finger, first, second, third finger are already down. So let's talk about this measure. Let's assume we've made it up to 5th position. So we have an E, F, drop that third finger, and then we can play a grace note. So we want to make sure our third finger is prepped. Pa-da, pa-da, because that grace note's going to go by fast. And then we have an F sharp. So how do we find that F sharp? We just think about a half step below our third finger, and that's how we'll find that. Now, we're playing in measure 10, and A, and we need to feel our first finger go down a whole step from E natural to D natural, right? So it's already on E. It's been on E since we left it there, and now we're gonna feel that finger go down a whole step. You're gonna feel that go down a whole step. So now we're in 4th position. So this measure 10, is not necessarily difficult. Measure 11, it might be tempting to shift somewhere when you see that D with a 4 over it, but you don't need to. You can just stay in 4th position. You can just stay in 4th position there. So we have F, D, and then we have an up bow that is going to be rearticulated. We have a tenuto, so this is sort of a portato or lure stroke. Very slight rearticulation. It's not a staccato. It's going to be long. Sort of a suggestion of a stop. I like to think about drawing like really gentle curves with the bow, almost not even letting it off the string. And then decrescendo there, nice ending to the phrase. Now, what comes next? We need to get ourselves out of 4th position into 3rd position. Luckily, that's only a whole step down. But remember, our hand needs to come back fully to 3rd position, meaning our thumb where it needs to be. So now that we've made it back to 3rd position, I'm going to grab my pencil and address an error. Yeah, I sort of mentioned there'd be some errors in this edition. So some of these notes, in my part, are just plain old quarter notes, but that doesn't work rhythmically. They really need to be double dotted quarter notes, just like the one on the line above it. So I'm going to put 2 dots next to the C natural in measure 13. All right, 2 dots next to the G sharp in that same measure, 2 dots next to the A, 2 dots next to the E quarter note, and then I should be good. So that way the 32nd notes that come after it make sense and fit within the beat, okay? So that means we're going to approach this in much the same way we approached the measure before that. So I want you to think about subdividing ta 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 ta. So let me subdivide with my bow. You can feel free to play along if you want. So I'm going to play 16th notes and then the slurred 32nd note. So I'm going to play 1 E and a 2 E and para, 1 E and a 2 E and para, and so on, okay? Ready? And... So, when you're playing it, I want you to think about it in this way. Have those 16th notes subdividing in your head. Ta 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 ta. Ta ta ta. Right, and then we're all good. So, a little bit of shifting in here, but I'm sure you can handle it. I think the rhythm will be what gets most people. Most people will probably play these just as normal 16th notes, but that's not right. They need to be much closer to the beat than a regular 16th note would be, okay? So let's talk about what happens in measure 15. We have this deal here, these 16th notes. This shift up to 3rd position, no big deal. The main thing I want to remind you of is just to use the C first finger as a guide tone to make sure you're really in 3rd position, okay? Now, we have a bunch of grace notes all stuck in here. And I find it a little bit rushed to play the end of this measure, measure 15, exactly in time. So if you're with a metronome and you're playing it exactly in time, it's sort of like ba da da da. It's possible, but it doesn't sound very musical to me. So in an audition setting, I would relax the tempo ever so slightly. Now, don't do it too much. Don't make it seem like you're slowing down just because it's hard. But you can relax the tempo just a tiny bit because these are a bunch of grace notes. It's stylistically appropriate, and it's the end of a phrase. So I think it would be appropriate here. So we've just played these 16th notes. And we have these grace notes. Ba dee da dee da 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 da. Don't slow down any more than that for sure. That's already pushing it. So this does involve going into 2nd position. C, D, C, shift down B natural, C, G, and when you go to the G, let your hand come back up to 3rd position. So practice this slowly. Until you really get it, and then just work on getting that faster and faster and faster. And at some point, the tempo will get too fast where it does not sound very musically pleasing anymore, and that's when you know you're about at your limit, okay? So we've reached measure 16, which is the 3rd line. Now we need to shift down for these grace notes. These grace notes, I play them before the beat. I go bum, pa-dum, 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 and allow that to help me with this portato stroke just a little bit. It's sort of a pulsing thing. The other thing you should be thinking about is the bow traveling a little bit closer to the fingerboard and letting up on that weight and speed just a little bit to make this decrescendo down to piano happen, okay? Measure 17 through 18, not too difficult, but we do have a shift up to third position. So in the second half of measure 17, I'm going to use G as a guide tone in order to get up to third position. When I play it in context, you can't really hear it very clearly, but it is there. And then timing those grace notes is also important. So make sure you're not messing with the underlying rhythm to place those grace notes. They should fit within that half note and then quarter note. So you can really check that with a metronome. Okay, so now we're at the second half of line 3, measure 19. This is a little section that I think is maybe one of the more difficult ones. It has a lot of shifting. It has some kind of chromatic notes, some difficult stuff. So let's take a look at it. We're on the G string. We're in first position here with this A flat. Shift up to second position, so B natural. This is going to be just a half step above the B flat you played with your second finger. Okay, so we have 1, 2, A flat. Now, how on earth do you find that A flat? That's sort of the question that I think most people will be asking themselves there. So, you've just played a C natural in second position. That C natural is on a second finger. So, using sort of guide tone rules, what is your second finger going to be on to reach that A flat? So let's think. A flat's a fourth finger, which makes third finger a G, which makes second finger an F natural. So we need to go from this note to this note, but shift up on the G string. And then you can ask, what position is that in? It's in fifth position, which means our first finger is on E, okay? So practice going from C to F in fifth position, okay? That's going to be a little bit of a tricky shift for a lot of people, but with a little practice you can do it, okay? So in context, and then you're in fifth position, no worries. So now you need to go over to the C string. We're not going to shift, we're still in fifth position, but this can be a little hard to nail this D flat. I'll tell you, the key to getting the D flat up there is really your third finger, C. And it's also harmonic. So that D flat, it just is not going to happen unless you have that third finger down as well, okay? So you have D flat, C, B flat, and then A flat, first finger. So when you've gone over, you'll need to make sure that your first finger, which was on an E natural, goes down a half step to reach that A flat, okay? And then we have A flat, C, 3, shift down a half step to G, and then C is now on our fourth finger. And now we're down to third. This measure, measure 22, the last line of, or the last measure of line 3, we're going to play this arpeggio that brings us from third position, 1, 3, 1, 2, back up to fifth position. This is a little bit of an easier shift though, third to fifth, a little more familiar. And And now that we're playing this A flat, we need to go right back down to second position. This is another one that you may need to practice. A flat down to B first finger, kind of a little bit of a difficult interval to hear, and it's certainly shifting from fourth finger in fifth position to first finger in second position on a chromatic note. A little bit of a difficult shift to hit. So this is one to isolate. And now we're on the fourth line, measure 23, okay? So, measure 23, pretty easy stuff for the left hand. Now the right hand gets a little bit of work to do. This is not very hard, but what I hear a lot of times with this etude is this. People moving too much, so they're sort of making this real choppy sound. Try to see how little you can move on this. Try to almost create a double stop with your smooth string crossings. It'll make it much smoother. So remember, the strings are not far apart. You don't have to move very much to go from G and back to C and then back to G, okay? In measure 24, I like to relax the tempo just a little bit because we're returning to the very beginning, to the beginning material. So I'll go... And it just makes it a little bit more musical to sort of relax a bit, and then we're right back in tempo on measure 25. We're back to the C material. So this is all the same as the beginning. One notable difference is we have an accent over the D. You can use the bow, of course, it's in the middle of a slur, but you can use a little extra speed to get that accent going. Another thing you can think about is the left hand, so having really good left hand articulation and also adding a little bit of fast vibrato on that accented note to make it stick out just a little bit and have that accent be there, okay? But that's really the only change. Okay, same stuff. And now things change, okay? Surprise. We have, in measure 31, we have different material. Now, a couple things about this different material. One, it's piano. It's a subito piano, actually. We have this crescendo, ba-di-la-la-da, and then we have piano. So we need to really make sure we drop to that dynamic there in measure 31. Another thing, you may have noticed, at least in your edition, these are just, it looks like eighth notes, they're grouped in threes, but it's not marked as a triplet. It should be. These are triplets. If you actually count how many they are, they really need to be triplets. They're not just grouped in groups of three for no reason. So, in case you're confused about that, these are triplets. So we have ba di la la dum, bi da di da di da di da di da 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 da, right? So we're just going to think of these in groups of three. So with this measure, we drop down to piano, but then we also have a crescendo to the middle of the measure and a decrescendo back. So if I play this for measure 30, hopefully you'll see this big crescendo drop, little swell in these triplets, and then we'll end the phrase. So here's for measure 30. Okay, so getting all those dynamic details in there will really set things apart for you. Now, for something completely different, we have this piano E flat, okay? This is in first position, nothing to worry about in terms of shifting just yet. It can be challenging to play this note at piano dynamic because everything so far has actually been quite low in range. This section at the end of this line is really the highest we go. And higher notes tend to want to be louder. It can be really hard to play this at a piano dynamic. So I think about getting a little further away from the bridge contact point. I think about using a little bit less speed, although speed can be our friend here. I think about using much less weight and a little more bow tilt, so a little bit less hair. Speed can make things sing, and this being a Cantabile Etude, I do want to keep singing. So I'm mostly going to move my contact point, use less weight, change my bow hair tilt to achieve this lower dynamic. We're up to third position. We do this in the next measure. Not a hard shift. We got it. Fifth position. So in measure 35, we go up to fifth position, and then we go right back down to first position. So if we look at measure 35, we're in third, up a half step to first finger, and then down to first. This little thing in 36 can be a little hard to play correctly with the rhythm, the ornament, these different things. So we have practice this on its own. Ba-dum, ba-dum. And then we have a rest, and then we have these two C's. Dee-da-ba-dum, pa-dum. Okay? There's still a certain part of the same idea, but there's a little bit of a pause there, right? It's a rest. So it requires us to kind of re-articulate that last C in the slur, really. So the next two measures, nice and easy. Third position, first position, a little bit of a crescendo. The last three measures of this line, I do want to talk about in a little more detail, though. It's a similar figure over and over, but it's played in different ways. Whenever something repeats, obviously we don't want to do it the same way over and over again. And the person who edited this for us gave us different ways to do it. So, the first time we have E natural, harmonic, D, fourth finger D, and then stuff in third position and then back down. The next time is just first position, easy, and then the time after that requires us to go up to fourth position. Okay, so let's look at the first time this happens. 6, 2, 7, 3, 8, 3, 9, in measure 39. So we have first position, hand goes to third, and we extend. Back to first. Now, hand goes to third. This is an important detail because, yes, you might nail that fourth finger, but then immediately you gotta be in third position. You may be able to nail that harmonic, no problem, but after that you really gotta be in third position. You can't really be messing around trying to find it, right? So you want to feel your hand go to third and then just extend. And then you can come right back to C and it's right where you need it to be. So here. Practice that. And when your fingers go down, make sure they're all going down in the right pattern. Now we're in first position, easy. And now this one, fourth position. And that last F that's slurred in always gets me. For some reason I don't save enough bow. You may be the same, so make sure you save bow there at the end of that line for that last note that's on the final line. So our guide tone here in measure 41 on this last measure of this line should be A, first finger on A. So when you are practicing this, practice shifting to really fourth position, first finger on A, to get this. Okay, all right, last line. A couple little things here to keep in mind as well. We have some scales, we have some double stops, we have a sextuple at the end. That's kind of what's left. So we've just played this F. If you're anything like me, you've almost run out of bow at this point. Now there are a couple ways to play what comes next in 42. We could do this 2, 1, 1. I find that B flat 1 1 can be a little schmeary. It can be a little gross. So I really like to play that C with a third finger. So I go B flat, B natural, C. And it's really clean that way. You can do it either way. If you want to do the slidey fingering, just make sure you're sliding really quickly so it doesn't sound like just a smear. Okay, so we have, and then we have a lot of my students over the past few years, their favorite or least favorite measure is this double stop business. Little bit tricky, kind of some sneaky stuff you got to do with the left hand to make it work. Let's talk right hand because it's simple. Just save bow, because it's really easy to run out here. So we're on an up bow. C, add the open C. So we have, for one beat, just third finger. Then we have C and C. And then we have D and B. This is a sixth, 1 and 2. Now our second finger comes back from B to B flat, and we add our third finger. And then we think about what's behind our low 2 is 1, and our third finger has to expand up. So 3 plus 0, 1 2, 3 2, 3 1. Okay, so I would practice this one at a time. One thing I do with my double stops is I actually practice them like this, lower, higher together. And then I'll try to put into context, maybe try them as just really long notes. Really think about what your fingers are doing here and use your ear as much as possible. Listen for that wobble that you get when a double stop is out of tune, and try to decide, what are my tendencies? I'll tell you mine. My tendency is for the A to be sharp. The A is often sharp at the end. So I try to just think lower than I want to be with that A to make it in tune. Okay, this next run, you could do one of two ways. If you want to do the super clean way, you could do it with a 4. This one I think is a little hard to do with a 4, because after those double stops, you're just kind of out of bandwidth to do fancy, funny stuff. So I just play it with a 3 myself. So I will go 3, make sure this has an accent on it. 2 2. I find this a little easier to make clean than the previous one with doing a slidey fingering, okay? This third to last measure here, we go to third position, and then we go back a half step to second position. And then we hang out on this E for a minute, and then we have a sextuplet. Da, dee da dee da dee da. Now the good news is we have a poco writ here, so this can be kind of an artistic sextuplet, so we can take our time just a little bit. So we have ba, dee da dee da da da, and slow. Just relax into it just a bit here. So we have. And you can mess around with it, sing it to yourself. Try to find your favorite way to make it sound really musical. Okay, so we've gone through sort of measure by measure, phrase by phrase. If you're still here, good job, because I know it's been a lot. This etude can be a challenge, but if you practice it, take it bit by bit, really think about where your problem spots are and focus on those, you can definitely get it, especially if you think about the fundamental principles of shifting and of guide tones. That is what's really going to help you play this accurately. If there's anything I left out, any additional questions you have about it, please let me know. Be happy to hop in the comments or on email and answer anything you might have. But otherwise, I hope you found this video helpful. I wish you the very best of luck at your auditions this fall. And as always, happy practicing.